Hi, this is Santosh Shiva, your host at RunYogi Diaries. Welcome back to another episode. Hope you're all doing well. In this show, I bring conversations with people who are on a journey of well-being and fitness. Hope they spark a new possibility for you, perhaps inspire you to take some action, or maybe leave some tips that you can use in your own journey itself. Please consider subscribing to this channel by pressing the subscribe button, like the video if you like the conversation, and for sure leave comments below. Love to hear back from you. My guest today is David Waters. I have been following his work through his YouTube channel called the Plant Powered Runner. He's a person on a mission. What is fascinating for me about him is that he is on this personal journey and he's also wanting to share that with the intention of helping others. And he is also a passionate follower of the Maffetone method, has been talking about that on his channel as well. So we get to talk about how it all started. How does someone who has been on a meat-based diet all his life switch to plant-based diet? What and why of the MAF method, what he's learned from it and how it's helped him, how he had to deal with a funk phase in his life, especially in the middle of his running journey, what he discovered in the process, and how he came out of it, the why of his YouTube channel and how it's grown and what it's serving, and why running is more than just a physical experience. Let's begin. Hey David, welcome to RunYogi Diaries.
How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You know, you have a great story. I've been seeing your video. Your video YouTube channel is amazing, and everyone who's watching this should check it out. But I love the passion, energy, and the goodwill I see in what you do. So there's a lot we need to talk about, your personal journey as well as what you're doing in your channel. But before we jump in, let me hand it over back to you. Brief personal introduction, where do you live, what you do, and then we'll proceed from there.
Sure. So my name is David Waters, and I have a YouTube channel called The Plant Powered Runner. Now, in my personal life, I am a real estate agent in Ontario, Canada, and I've been practicing real estate for about 14, going on 15 years. Been quite a while. I'm with Remax, and it's been kind of cool. So I have not always been a runner. I've literally come into this in the last probably 6 years. And I haven't been running for all of those 6 years. I was very overweight. I was about 266 pounds. Blood pressure was about 180 over 110. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Very, very, very big guy. People said, you carry your weight really well. I'm like, yeah, but it's still on me and I still feel awful. And my eyes feel like they're popping out of their eye sockets because my blood pressure was so high. I was not a good example of health, to be quite honest. I mean, I ate really well when I was home when my wife cooked, but when I went out on the road, which was like pretty much right after breakfast, I ate so poorly. It was awful because I would only go where I could get food. So when I would travel to go from one appointment to the next, I'd be hitting up donut shops for coffee and a bagel, and then a muffin, and then another coffee, and then, burger, cheeseburgers, fries, gravy, the whole thing, right? Like all the way through the day. And I'd get home at the end of the day and I wouldn't exercise. I gave I don't know. I looked after everybody else but myself. is what happened. That's kind of where I was. I wasn't.
What about your growing years? Were you active, athletic types? So tell us about that.
Yeah. So growing up, I looked up to a lot of Olympians. We had an Olympic athlete, Ben Johnson, at the time. He's also a disgraced Canadian sprinter in the 100 meters, anabolic steroids, and not just once, but twice. He got nailed for it. And but at the time, before all that happened, I was running the 100 meter. I was running cross country. I was in those sports as, I think, grade five. I think it was a grade 5, 6, 7, 8. I was kind of like, that's where like my running time was. But I only got into running because I got bullied. And when I
Mm.
was a kid, like I wasn't the smartest kid around, and I suffer from dyslexia. So I see words backwards. I put words in the spelling, grammar. It's a challenge, right? Having dyslexia.
Mhm.
But at the time, no one knew what that was. So I got called stupid by my principal. I got belittled by
Mm.
my teachers. Students were not that great, and I I just had to run away. So the more I just kind of took off and went home, I would run, and I got really fast at running, and I liked it.
Mhm.
And so I always look at it like the bullies actually bullied me into the sport that I actually love right now. So it's kind of how it ended up. But I ended up running cross country. I came third, second, third, and then I in cross country I think was like 3 or 4 kilometers I would run. So
Mm.
it wasn't like that far, and that was fine for a period of time. But then I discovered working, and I started working in
Yeah.
a banquet hall, and I found girls and all that kind of stuff. So basically, the running disappeared once I got into grade 9, and it never really came back
Mhm.
until 6 years ago when I was really heavy.
Right. Got it. Wow. The interesting thing is that because there was some level of running already in your life in some form, and at least you could go back to it when you realized you were going down a path of bad health, right?
Yeah, once I started to realize that something needed to change, I just couldn't continue to keep putting on the weight and keep going down that road. Um, and literally, I didn't get back into running right away. It wasn't like,
Hmm.
oh, I woke up and went, oh, I'm going to go run. My diet was awful. My joints ached. I was a mess. So I kind of started to do a slow approach and went, okay, well, what can I change today? So I started to change what I was eating because that's what I was buying. So if I could
Hmm.
change that, then other things could come along the road. So I started walking. I walked basically for probably a good part of a year. I literally
Okay.
walked
And this
every day.
was 2014, I guess, 6 years back, right?
Yeah, 2014.
Mhm.
And I literally just kind of walked and walked and walked. And it got to a point where it was like, okay, I can't walk anymore. I need to kind of get into the running aspect of it.
Mm.
So I woke up one morning, August 31st, 2014, and I ended up walking a marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't planned. It's just like I had took my dog with me at the time. I had my headphones on, audio, like a podcast playing, and all of a sudden, I was like, "Whoa, wait a second! Where the heck am I? I just walked on these country roads, and ended up so far away from home. I'm like, I have to walk back." And so I'm like, "Well, if I take a couple of side roads and make it a little bit longer, it'll be a full marathon." So I ended up walking a marathon, and got home, and I thought, that's something that I just don't like. My legs hurt, everything hurt. It was like so hot, like it was 30, I think it was 33 Celsius, and I don't know how hot Fahrenheit, but it's like it's getting up into the hundreds, almost.
Yep.
I don't know, it's almost 100. And the humidity was crazy. My dog had no water, I had no water. I just had my phone and a dog leash and a hat, and I just kept walking. And every stone that I stepped on just hurt so much in my
Yeah,
shoes.
yeah, yeah.
And so I got home, and it was the ALS challenge. That's what was going on at the time. And so I got home, and I literally filled up the water, and I just dunked my head. And yeah, that was the beginning of the end of walking. And started to go into the whole learn to walk, like learn to run.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about change of uh, food habits as a first step. What did you change?
The first thing I did is I ditched meat. Every time that I ate meat, I
Mhm.
felt lethargic. Just felt ill, like I didn't feel good. And I thought, there's got to be something to this, right? Because a couple of days, well, about 3 months prior to changing the whole diet, I went in to see my doctor, and my doctor said, "Dave, you got to change. Like you can't continue to do what you're doing." And I was like, "Okay, but I can change," because she wanted to put me on blood pressure medication. And I was like, "I don't want any of that. I don't want to be on meds. Like I want to do this myself.
Mhm.
I know I can." And so it took me 3 months before I actually took that first step. And I literally went through my pantry and threw out all the stuff that wasn't serving me, like crackers and cookies and stuff like that. And I got rid of them. And I went grocery shopping, took a picture of the food I bought, sent it to my wife, and I went, okay, it starts now. And that was the beginning of it. I just
So how
need,
did you?
I
Mhm.
just needed to change. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I just felt awful. My joints ached. My stomach was bloated. I knew that, you know, continuous eating of animal products wasn't something I wanted to continue, because I knew that they contributed to a lot of the um, issues out in the society, especially when it comes to climate change and all the water that goes into factory farming and animals. And I just didn't like to see animals be slaughtered, like, because I don't know, it was so hard to see that, right? And I just couldn't do it anymore. So I was like, that's got to change. Everything's got to change in my life, and I got to start now. It's like midlife crisis, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, so there are two things I think you said. One is the ethics of aspect of it, and we'll talk about that. And it's a controversial topic, and
Oh yeah,
right,
it's a controversial one for sure.
right. But let's get back to the health aspect of it. Was there something you referred to? Was there do you like did you were you inspired by someone? How did you know that this was the path was right for you?
I read a book called "Fat, Sugar, Salt: How the Big Food Chains Have Hooked Us" by a book by Michael Moss. Fantastic book. So I got the audio book. I also got the other book, Wheat Belly, and I forget
Hmm.
the author's name, but I got both of those audio books, and I would go out and I would walk every morning, like, 7 kilometers, 8 kilometers type of thing. And I just listened to those. And over time, it kind of started to lead me into other books, because if the food companies are hooking us to make us eat all this crap, then wait a second, there's got to be more to that. So I started to kind of dive deeper and deeper and deeper and go down that rabbit hole. And I found, like, people, like, I think the following year, so that was 2014. 2015, probably around March, I found Rich Roll,
Yeah.
and I started listening to consuming all of his podcasts, which led listening to Dr. Michael Greger. And I
Mhm.
started listening to his, and all of his stuff that he had, and I bought his books. And it just led me into Dr. What was it, Barnyard, I think his name. I could be wrong in the pronunciation, but
Sure.
there was a number of people along the way, and I just started to consume, and I was like, I just started educating myself, and that's
Mhm.
how it started to happen. Now, I never preached anything; I just
Right.
absorbed it, and then started to make those changes. And the more of those changes I made, the better I felt, and the
Mhm.
better I felt, the more I wanted to do it, and the more I did
Right.
it, the better. It was like there was this cycle that just continued.
Right. Right. And if you were to, a lot of folks struggle with transitioning from a traditional, especially in the Western world, a traditional Western diet to a plant-based diet, which is a huge jump, right? Because almost everything has some form of meat, or there's a meat fat, or there's a non-animal fat, or so. If you were to give a few top three tips, right, for someone who wants to transition to the lifestyle, what would you recommend?
Okay, I guess the first thing is, don't expect it to all happen in one day, right? You didn't get to where you are in one day, right? It took me 42 years to get to where I was,
Mhm.
right? So I had to make that change. So go slow, right? Go slow. Don't think that you have to drop everything at once.
Mhm.
I basically said, look, I'm going to give up red meat first, and I did. And then I went, okay, I'm going to give up the white meat, right? So then I gave up all the white meat. Then it's like, okay, I'm going to give up. What else can I give up? I'll give up cheese. I'll give up cheese. And then I failed, and I was like, okay, cheese is going to be the last one to go. So I'm like, what else can I give up? So I picked little things along the way that I could give up.
Right.
The number two was get informed, right? Look at what you're consuming, right, in terms of media, right, and start looking at the sources of where you're consuming. So, I don't listen to anything. Like I haven't watched TV in 18 years. I don't have
Wow.
people, I don't have anything, right? So one of the things that I see a lot of people watch is propaganda, right? Like a lot of stuff there's no value to it other than people lying to you, right? If you want to be educated, you need to dive into the literature and start doing research for yourself, right? So I found PubMed was a great location, and then books on authors, and I just started to consume those books. So the more I got dialed into that, the more I learned, the more I wanted to apply what I was learning. So go slow, get educated, and then start to apply what it is that you are learning, and give yourself some leeway. Like don't be all militant about it and say it's got to be this way and that's it, and I'm going to be closed minded. You got to be open because data and science is always changing. So I'm one of those types of people who takes the information, applies it, but then is also open to changes as science changes as well. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I would approach it. Now, the one thing I would say, and this is true for I think anybody, when it comes time to do your taxes, okay, you put it off. You don't want to get all your bills, you don't want to get all your things and collect all the paper and have to write it down and spend all of that time going through something that's like, you know what, it's simpler to put it off, right?
Mhm.
Now, it's easier to put it off when you've got lots of time, but as the time dissipates and you get closer to that date, then the pain and pleasure factor come into play, right? Because they switch.
Mhm.
And it's actually painful not to do your taxes the closer it gets, as opposed to before, where it was easier to put off.
Right.
So once that switches, then once it gets harder to put off, and you just have to get it done, and it's going to be more pleasurable to get it done, then what happens is you just get it and you just do it. So it's the same thing for me. If you want to see a change in your health, putting off is simple. But if you put a date in there and you ask people to hold you accountable to achieving your goal on a certain date, you're going to do everything you can so you don't let people down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of some of the things that I would suggest, right? You can tell somebody, do a YouTube video. You could tell somebody that this is what it is you want to do. Be public about it. However it is that you want to be held accountable. Once you find that accountable, the person that's going to do that for you, then things can change because now you've got a timeline.
Yeah. No, those are great tips. And I read this book called Atomic Habits recently, and one of the things that I took away from that book was great tip. Put it out there, as a public, commitment, and then you have folks who call on you and support you in making that happen. The other thing, what I read about was a fundamental shift in identity is a source for keeping something sustainable. For example, if you run a marathon, but at the end of it, you have two choices: to call yourself a runner or say, I just did a marathon. It's a big difference. The moment you identify yourself as a runner, that becomes a sustainable uh, thing, because now you will go out and run because you called yourself a runner. That was an
Absolutely.
interesting takeaway I got that from that book.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's fantastic. Absolutely. I think the more that we put a label on ourselves, um, sometimes it can actually paint you into a corner, or it can help you get to where it is that you want to go. And it just depends on how you want to look at it, right?
yeah,
So, like I said, there's some people who are just victims in life who it's
yeah,
going to be everybody else's problem, but they don't take ownership of it themselves. They'll blame, oh, I was raised in a poor family, or I was raised in an abusive family, or I was raised in an alcohol, whatever it is, right? There's
yeah.
always blame on somebody else. But if we use the pain, like when I got bullied, right? I used that pain
Mhm.
that I was being dealt with, and I used it in a positive way to propel me to somewhere that I didn't know it was going to take me, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so some people can do it and some people can't. And it comes down to that person. And if you can give a helping hand to somebody to get them to that stage, man, you could literally alter someone's life right then and there if people just cared a little bit more about their fellow human beings.
yeah, yeah.
So that's the way I look at it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's great. And the other thing that I think you make an interesting observation about some of these, the science, evolving science of some of these things, right? And that's so bang on as well, because that a lot of times I've gotten into this debates and conversations about, hey, but you know, this was what I mean. Low carb was the thing about 2 years ago. Now, why are we saying this? So look, I think end of the day, you got to pick what serves you, and like you said, try it on. If it works, stay with it. If it doesn't work, dismantle it and go pick up something else. But it's all about a means to you feeling fit and well. So that's really a great point you make there as well.
Yeah, the big thing I look at, and again, I'm always learning new things every day, is everybody is doing the best that they can do with what they've been given and what they currently know. And nobody should be able to judge anybody else. You're not in that person's shoes. You're not living their life. So what I try to do is I just try to lead with a giving hand, right? Live my life. If I can inspire somebody to question some things in their life so that they can make the changes they feel necessary, then I think that's a good thing. And I'm not here to tell you whether it's right or wrong. I'm just here to share my experience. And then what you do with that is strictly up to you. And that's the way I've approached things in my life.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. So coming back to your journey and running, and you were telling us about walking. You finished a full marathon on by walking, and you said you were just about in the cusp of telling us about your running journey. So tell us about that.
Well, after that happened, I signed up for a Learn to Run through a local running store, and I started, doing this walk run method. So I'd walk for a minute, I'd run for one, and then work your way up to running, walking for one, running for two, and I just continued this, and eventually got to a point where I was running kind of nonstop for about, I don't know, I think 3 kilometers. And then it just got longer, and then it got longer. And I'm like, I don't need to walk anymore. I'm just going to run. And then I ran. And before I knew it, I ran my first 5K dressed as Santa at the Burlington Santa race in Burlington, Ontario, where we have all these other, like, thousands of people dressed up as Santa. And we went for our run. It was flipping awesome. And I still have the costume today. And I use that to run on Christmas Day. And I've done that for like the last 5 years or 4 years. But so yeah, I started the 5K, and that 5K, once I finished, I'm like, I want to do more. I'm a runner now and I want to do more, right? And I went home, and I think that was in December. And then in January 2015, I signed up for a 10K, and then a half marathon, and then a marathon. And then I went on, I just started my training, and then I went on Facebook and said, big announcement, I'm going to try to do a Boston qualifier for my first marathon. And wow. I just put it out there, and I kept training and training and training. And I did extremely well. I mean, I didn't qualify, but I mean, I think I was 3 hours, 34 minutes.
That's a good mean pace.
Yeah. And I was excited. It was awesome. Yeah. And then I had the big letdown of like, oh, now I'm really depressed because I'm not running, because I didn't have another goal. I'm like, yeah. And then, I talked to a friend of mine, and he's like, well, what do you want to do next? I'm like, I want to qualify for Boston still. So I started training again, and I ran the next year, 2016, to qualify down in Hamilton. And halfway through, boom, I hit the wall. I had no electrolytes left. I drank everything I had. Everything was gone. I had a friend of mine who was riding his bike alongside me, filming. And I pulled all kinds of muscles in my back all the way down. Like, it was bad. And it was because I was dehydrated. And I got sick. When I look back, I go, I was sick a week before I went to run. Even though I was hydrating and I was trying to feel better, I ran, and I wasn't in good condition to be running, and I shouldn't have run. But I hit the wall. It took me out. And then I didn't run for like 6 months. And I didn't sign up for another race. That was 2017. I call 2017 and 2018, and even part of 2019, a big black hole in my running. I wasn't consistent. I didn't have a goal. I didn't know where I was going. I was running in the wrong kind of shoes. I was just in my head. I wasn't in a good place. It was. I went. It was, and there was like personal stuff going on. It was a rough number of years, and I lost my way. Weight gain started to happen because I was so stressed. I would stress eat, and I really did lose my way. And yeah, it was really bad.
And how did you pull yourself back? I mean, what happened?
I went for a run with my running group, a bunch of vegans called Team Vegan Trails. We got a Facebook group, and they kind of said, "Hey, Dave, we're going to be doing this run. Do you want to come out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll be there." So I went, and I went for a run, and I was with them, and it was cool, and I enjoyed it. And when I finished, we did one of the selfie pictures, and did the whole thing. And I took one look at myself, and I was like, I can't do this again. I can't go down the same road. Like I just can't. So I was like, that's it. I'm making some more changes. Going to get back into this, and I'm going to do what I thought I wanted to do a long time ago. And I'm going to train by heart rate. I'm going to get a pair of ultra shoes. I'm going to run 0 drop, kick the heel striking, and this is what I'm going to do. And I started like 2 days later. I kind of started.
So when you were in this the period where it was funky, right? What was going on for you? What was stopping you? And did you read about heart rate during that time, or tell us about how did you deal with that period? I mean, a lot of people go through that, right? You
Yeah.
start off with a lot of energy, you accomplish some things, and you've done that. You almost qualified for Boston, and then boom, you hit a funk. And but you seem to have something seems to have been working in the background that got you back to take action again, right? Because my guess is that was work in progress. It didn't happen just like that. Something was going on in the background. You were thinking about it. So if you share a few things about that, because I think others deal with similar, all of us deal with that, right?
Yeah, and thanks for wanting to explore that, because I've had time to think over the last number of years as to what kind of happened. Like in my life personally, there was just lots of stress with work, right? A lot of stuff, trying to help people, trying to figure out. I don't have the time to run. I didn't know how to put all the pieces back together, like, because I was using that as an excuse and not dealing with really what happened. And I was hiding. I was hiding from the fact that I failed twice to qualify for Boston. And I was hiding. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to go there. And in my head, I'm like, I'm a failure. I told all these people that I was going to go out and I was going to Boston qualify. And I just feel like I let everybody down. And I let myself down because it's like, I can't run because I'm injured. And because I was injured, I got frustrated. And then I got frustrated and I turned to food because, again, you want to comfort yourself. Mm-hmm. So I just started eating a lot of junk food, vegan stuff, right? A lot of chips, right? A lot of just junk food. But there was something in my head that said, it's not that I didn't run. I was running inconsistently because I didn't have a goal. Because I thought, well, if I don't have this Boston Marathon goal that I want to do, what am I going to do? I'm just lost. I'm at sea without paddle. And I wasn't willing to improvise. And so I reached this point one day where I'm like, something's got to change. Like, I can't continue to do this. And I think I paced a buddy of mine when his first 50 miler, he dropped me. Okay. Mm-hmm. He dropped me. And I thought I was going to be okay to keep up with him, but man, he dropped me, and I ended up crewing other people who needed help to finish. So I kind of like, okay, well, I'm out in the course, I may as well help others reach their goal. But yeah, like I just kind of, I started to try to help other people and not pay attention to any of my running. And then the weight gain started to happen again, and I started to feel it. And then I started to see myself in photos, and I started to see how much weight I had gained. And I'm like, this is not in it. I don't know if it's a vanity thing or what it was, but I just couldn't fit into my clothes again. And I'm like, I don't want to go down that road because I still have my fat man pants, and my fat man pants are massive. And one day came home from work, and I'm like, I went over to the cupboard or to the closet, and I got them out, and I put them on over top of my clothes or my pants, and went, okay, I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not fat. Didn't gain all the weight back. I have gained some weight, but I'm not there yet. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to start making these changes. And I just started to run again. Inconsistently, I started to run, but then it wasn't until that picture that I took with my buddies, and I then had a conversation with a running mentor, a friend of mine, who pulled me aside and said, we need to talk. And so we sat down in Tim Hortons, which is our local coffee shop in Canada. It's like Dunkin' Donuts. And we sat down and we talked for like an hour and a half. And at the end of it, I said, that's it. Okay, it's happening. And I started to go, I signed myself up for a half marathon at Scotiabank. And I started doing this whole Maffetone training. Now, I ran the half marathon, and in my head, I was running, and I'm like, okay, I want to do it under 2 hours. And that's what I decided halfway through. And I think I got to about kilometer 16, and I started to fall behind. I could see like the 2 hour bunny, right, runner. Right? He was here, and then I was like here, and I'm like, how am I going to catch up? And I went into a deep place in my head and said, I'm going to endure the pain, and I got to run. So I picked it up, and I ended up running an hour and 58 minutes. And that wasn't my fastest half, but I was happy. I was like, okay, I'm back. I can do this again. And it started me on down that road. Now, what was interesting was a buddy of mine, because we were doing a podcast at the time, Trail Tales. And so my buddy Sean goes, hey, so are we going to do that 50 kilometer? I'm like, I just ran like this half marathon, and I'm going to now do this 50 kilometer. I've never done 50 kilometers, but we went out and we did it on Thanksgiving, or it's not Thanksgiving, Remembrance Day, November 11th. And we started off at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we just ran for like 6.5 hours. And
Awesome.
so everything started to solidify, everything started to come about. But again, it was because of the picture, and it was because I felt it happening again, and I didn't want to go back to where I was. That's really what it came down to.
Yeah. And what I'm also hearing in your story is in that half marathon, when you pulled something up from deep within to do that sub 2, something clicked. There was a personal victory. It needn't have been the fastest finish, but there was a personal victory that got you back on track. And that's a great story, because a lot of us get into that funk. It's a part of life. If you're a runner, or if you're any kind of in any pursuit, you get into this funk. You start making yourself wrong. You start making yourself smaller than those big goals you set out to do, and then in the process miss the big picture. And so great story there, David. Thanks for sharing. And I hope people who are listening to this are getting a sense of, if you're in a funk, it's not the end of the world. Be at it. Find a mentor like you did. Get some external motivation and energy, and go give it what you got, and you'll be back. So great story there. And you talked about Maffetone, and you're a passionate advocate of MAF, right? And MAF seems to be seems to have hit mainstream in the running circles these days, and everybody's talking about MAF. You either have pro MAF or anti MAF, and it's become like a thing now. I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, all of us need something to be for and against. So anyway, MAF is that now. So tell us about MAF. What's been your experience? And I know there's a lot of videos you put out there, but quickly, uh, what's been the story in MAF? Why MAF?
Well, I guess I look at it this way. I had to have a different approach to the way I was training before, because I did burn out, and I did, like, that first marathon just sent me over the edge. Like, I really did burn out. I was training extremely hard. All of my runs were way too hard. Like, I never had an easy run. And if my easy run was considered easy, what's the definition of easy? I have no guideline of what easy is. So I knew that I couldn't go back to that kind of training. And Maffetone training, I mean, I discovered him way back in 2015, when I was kind of taking a look at what's going on. But I'd already, see, the funny thing is the ego, right? It says, look, this is your training plan. I'm already in my training plan. I'm not going to change my training plan to then go embark on this other type of training. I'm going to see this through, and then maybe I'll figure out about this later. And I wish it was the other way around. I wish I had listened to my gut, because I knew what I was doing was wrong. It was too fast. And like I said, something else had to change. Mm-hmm. So this time around, I was like, okay, you know what? It's time. I'm going to run an ultra, 0 drop, and I'm going to do Maffetone training. Now, if anyone doesn't know what Maffetone training is, it's 180 minus your age. And if you're on medication, you got to deduct heartbeats. And if you're older, you may have to add heartbeats, right? Like, there's a whole little formula around it, right? I'm not going to beat the drum and continue on that road, but that's essentially what it is, right? And you basically, what you're doing is you're building your aerobic engine, right? You're building your aerobic base, and by running slow, right, you build that foundation. Okay, you get faster at running at the same heart rate by running slower. Okay, it's kind of odd, but that's just the way it works. So there's different ways of doing it. I started off, I didn't go to a track and do it at first. I would just run on the same route that I would run every single day, and I was able to measure how I would improve. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is you want to see improvement every single day. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work like that, right? Mm-hmm. It's every month is when you want to do a MAF test and see whether or not you're improving or not, right? Mm-hmm. Because ideally, you warm up for 15 minutes, and then after you do your warm up, then you go out for your run. Mm-hmm. And as you run, your heart rate stays steady, but your pace slowly declines. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. Over time, you'll be able to continue to run and run and run, and then you'll be able to get faster and faster. And so you're decreasing, but you're starting at you're faster now. So when you decrease, it's not so bad, right? Yeah. So ideally, that's the approach that I wanted to take, because I didn't want to get injured. I didn't want to burn out. And I thought if I did it this way, that I would succeed in all of my goals, because I had some hefty goals that I wanted to achieve. And one of them, after I ran that 50 kilometers, I wanted to run a 50 miler. And that's 80 kilometers. And I was like, I can do this if I run slow. If I don't run slow, I'm going to burn out, I'm going to injure myself, and I'm going to be back at square one, because I'm going to have 6 months off or whatever it is. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because I've already been there. I've been there. So I learned from my past mistakes and said, this is the way that I'm going to run. And running slow has been probably the single best thing I've ever done in my life. Mm-hmm. Literally. And that's why I'm so passionate. And that's why I like to talk to people about it, because I know that it can help them. Now, yeah, you're going to have the naysayers, and then you're going to have people who are going to go, oh no, it needs to be 80-20. Well, what's your definition? What's your definition of 80-20? 80% math, right? 20% speed, right? You're not training in that gray zone. right? That gray
Yeah,
zone
yeah,
is
yeah,
when you
yeah.
get hurt and you overtrain. So to me, and this is just me and my experience, I don't tell anyone what to do this, I just share the
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
If you want to see improvements in your running, and if you're a new runner, if you're an injured runner, if you're an older runner, right? I'm not talking about the Olympic athletes. I'm not talking about, the elites. I'm talking about the average person, right? Whether you're male or female. This is the approach that you can take. So that way you can run for longevity. You can lose weight, reduce the injuries, right? Just feel better throughout the whole entire day. Have a stronger heart, right? Because without your heart being really strong, what do you got? You got
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah,
right? It
yeah.
doesn't exist.
Absolutely. Yeah, true.
So these are the things that's why I started to become really passionate, because I saw the results hugely. I saw the results. And because I saw the results, I wanted to do it more. And the more that I did it, the more results I saw. So I started to track it, right? And so I have my video that I put out, and I started to track all of my runs that I did, put it into a chart, and then I visually saw what I was feeling. And I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So I just continued and continued. And were there a couple of setbacks? Yeah, of course there's going to be setbacks. Just because you're running slow all the time, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get an injury. No, you will, right? You gotta do strength, you gotta do mobility, and I'm learning this myself because I'm off right now with a little bit of a runner's knee, right? Tight quads is what's dealing with that, right? And quads and IT band. Even though I would foam roll, but I just wasn't foam rolling enough, so I've kind of upped that. But I'm passionate about it because I know it works. I know it can help others, and I don't want them to have to go through the burnout and fall out of love of running like I did, right? And so that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Well, that totally makes sense. In fact, I've been dabbling with MAF for a year now, and I completely agree with you. And I also think that back in the day when there was no MAF, there was no heart rate. The first running book I read, the advice in that book was run using a conversational pace. That was the advice. First advice I got when I started running, 12 years ago. And I didn't have a GPS those days. But what I was told is, hey, if you can run and speak, have a conversation with a friend, you're probably running at the right pace for training for long distance running, right? And MAF is a measurable tool, is a framework that allows you to scientifically do that same thing, you know, and that's what I feel. And even if you do run walk, you're probably accomplishing a similar outcome where you're kind of managing your heart rate, you're running at a lower intensity, and if you hear any major coach, professional coach, they're telling the same thing, right? That hey, majority of your workouts for elites has got to be at low intensity, and MAP's really about doing the same thing in a framework and a structure. So yeah, I mean, I completely hear what you're saying, and I agree with that. Yeah, makes sense.
The one thing that I've come to learn as I've gone through this process is math is a measurement, right? The
Mhm.
tool that you're able to use as a measurement, right? So you can actually analyze what's going on in your life at this current moment
Yeah.
with heart rate.
Yes.
Because when you're stressed out financially or stressed out physically, or
Yep.
you're not getting sleep, or you're drinking too much coffee, these
Mhm.
things will elevate your heart rate, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so you may go out for a run and you'd be like, well, today's run's not as good as yesterday's. Well, what's
Yeah.
going on today, right? Are you running later in the day? Did you eat, right?
Yep. Yep.
All of these there's so many different factors, right? So I think that's why a lot of people kind of put down Maffetone training, because it's not like a consistent measurement, because every day is different, right? Every day is different.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think, and that's why I like it, because it allows me to train in a way that's authentic, right? That's
Yeah.
natural for
Yeah.
me in the movement of what's going on in my life. And
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
and that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. So
Absolutely.
I've learned
Absolutely.
I've learned so much of what my body, like how much training I can do when I'm in a stressful week.
Mhm.
And the other thing that the Phil Maffetone has talked about is if you're training, and this is your, I'm training at 138 beats a minute, right? That's
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
what my training is. That's my max. If I'm seeing results continuously throughout the whole entire year, I'm still seeing results and results and results, and then your birthday comes, and then you're a year older, people think, oh, I need to go ahead and reduce my beats, down. It's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the case at all. You keep it the same until it stops working,
Mhm.
right? Until you don't see that improvement. Now, you may actually have to say, hold on a second. I need to go ahead and add in some speed work for a month, right? He's talked about that because you hit a plateau.
Mhm.
And after a month, you go back to MAF. And if you're continuing, if you do that and you see results, fantastic. If you don't see results and you still aren't seeing any improvement, you may have to reduce, right? Go
Mhm.
down a
Mhm.
beat or two.
Okay.
If you take some time off, like if you're away from it for like a year and you come back to it, or 2 years, right? You may have to reevaluate what heart rate you're going to use.
Right.
But if you haven't run for 5 years, you're not going to come back and do what you were doing before. You're going to have
Yep.
to say, okay, well, I'm 5 years older, so this is what I need to run at now. So you have to look at it. That's where the ego comes in, right? You got to leave the
Mhm.
ego at the door because it really will sabotage most of your training
Yep.
if you allow it to take control, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And didn't you also complete a 100 miler in 2019 with using MAF?
No, that was my 50 miler
50
that I
miler.
did.
There we
Yeah,
go. Okay.
so
So
I created a 50-mile course right outside my house.
okay.
It takes me about 9 kilometers to run to the trailhead. And yeah, I just literally created a course for myself, and I achieved it. I
Cool.
accomplished it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's on my bucket list. And so this year I plan on running a 100 mile
All right.
race that I'm creating.
All right. So this is self-supported races runs you're doing, right? You're not going. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not a race. It's not anything. It's just I'm going to do the distance. And
Okay. Okay.
and that's the other thing that I've found, because with this whole COVID thing, a lot of races are canceled. And even if I could race, even if we were allowed to race,
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. I don't plan on racing probably until next year. Not because I don't want to. I just need to be responsible for myself, my family, and the clients that I'm helping. I'm not going to put myself in a
Yeah.
position that compromises any of that. So that's why I'm just looking forward to 2022 before I start getting into any races. So
Makes sense. And so these self-supported runs, 50 miles, and you're doing 100. When I think about it, that's a lot of self-motivation, discipline, and mental fortitude. How do you do it? How do you keep yourself interested for those 7, 8, 9, 10 hours all by yourself?
um, you, I mean, I enjoy variety. Like I enjoy running on the roads and I enjoy the trails. So I decided that I would create a course that would satisfy all of those wants and desires and needs, while right, I love stream crossings, like river crossings. I like uphills, right? I like downhills. I like big open meadows. I like trails, like dense trails. I so i decided if I create a course that has a lot of those things in it, then it'll keep me stimulated to want me to,
Mm.
like, oh yeah, I'm going to be running in this section over here. I'm excited about that, right? So then you get into that section. It's like, oh yeah, this feels really cool, right? I'm the type of person who loves to hear nature, like just crunching of the leaves under your feet and kicking of rocks and dirt and hearing the wind go through the leaves of the trees, being up in the open and being able to see, like, the sunrise come up, going through rivers and soaking my feet so I can cool down, falling through a bridge because I fell through a bridge, um, almost wiping out on these trees that had fallen over the trail. It's an adventure. It's like, what's going to happen around this corner? So I got through it because I wanted to create an experience and have it be fun, right? And to say to people and to myself that we can achieve whatever it is that we set up to do, right? I also wanted to go to the dark place because I had some unfinished business I had to deal with in that dark place. And sometimes people don't get what I mean by going to that dark place, but it's being alone with my thoughts. And when you're out there running for all of this time, you will reach a point where you will have to face those demons. You will have to be 10 years old again, 11 years old, right? You will have to go to the place where those people called you stupid, that called you an idiot, right? I went there and I met my maker. I met those demons because I had to get it out of my head, because it's always been this monkey on my back, always saying, look, you spelt that word wrong, or look at that, your grammar's not great, or look at, just in my head. And I'm like, I got to deal with this. I can't continue to go through life always, not wanting to play a game because, my spelling isn't going to be the greatest or my handwriting isn't the greatest. So I had to go to those places to deal with that, to say that I am strong, I am smart, I am good enough for who I am, right? I am not defined by a written word. I'm not defined by any matrix. I am me. And if you like who I am, great. If you don't, move out of my way. I don't care, right? I live my life on my terms, and I want to inspire other people to be happy, joyful, to achieve their goals that they want to do. And I want to lead with a giving hand. I'll help anybody, right? And so I needed to go to that place to change the course of where I wanted to go. So now that I've dealt with that, I feel so much lighter. The baggage is being dropped. And at the end of the day, that's how I got through that 50 miler is like that. Everything that I've just talked about, all wrapped up with a little bow.
Awesome.
That's how I dealt with it.
That's very profound, actually. Very profound. I mean, so literally self-healing is what happened.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Awesome. Beautiful, beautiful.
It was a, and I tell you, I watch my video. Like, I literally will watch my video, like my documentary video that I put out there. I will actually watch it so it can inspire me to help me get to my 100 miler now. I'm using my own video as a means of inspiration to get me to the next level. And to also remind myself, like, I did this, right? No one else did this. I did this. Right? Did other people help me along the way? Absolutely, they did, right? Friends out there came to crew for me and cheer me on. And that was amazing. That was motivating in itself, having people around. It was a wonderful experience. And I'm so grateful to everyone that had come out and helped me. But I had to go to that deep, dark place and deal with, I mean, I broke down, man. I was in tears. And I think in the video, there's a point in there where I literally broke down, and it was like, wow, no idea that I was going to deal with it at that moment. But the tears started to stream down my face. I started to weep like a baby. It was just, it was something else, man. I'll tell you. Relief. Relief.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost spiritual, isn't it? It's
running can be very spiritual for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about spirituality and yogi, it's really what yoga really is union with the universal consciousness.
Yes.
And I think as runners, we constantly get to a point of pure consciousness where there's no baggage, there's nothing. Nothing actually. You get to a point of nothingness, and all spiritual practices are structured to get you there. Whether it's meditation, whether it is, mantra, prayers, whatever. But eventually, when in running, you get to that as well. So
I strive for trying to get back to that place every time I go for a run because I want to be there. Like it's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but I mean, it's happened to me, and I've been chasing this for many, many years, is I want to get to the point of feeling like, and this happened to me, when you're out for a run, a trail run or a regular run, doesn't matter, but it reaches a point where I don't feel like I'm running anymore. I feel like I'm having this outer body experience where I'm seeing myself from above as I'm running, but I don't feel anything running anymore. I just feel like I'm floating. It's a very strange feeling. I've had it happen twice, very, very early on in my running. And then one was it last year or was it 2019? Anyways, can't remember. But it happened a second time, and I've been chasing it. I've always been trying to get back. It's like having those really, really good dreams, and you wake up and you're like, oh no, I want to go back to the dream because it felt so good. I try to do the same thing when I go for a run. I'm like, I wonder if I can get back into that place. But the harder you try to get back into it, the less likely it is to happen. And I've come to realize now that I have to just run and not think about trying to get back into a position like I was, those two other times, because those two other times, I believe it just happened when it happened. Yeah. So I got to stop chasing that and just do the work and get into it, just experience and be in the present moment and be grateful that I'm able to run.
You've been talking in your sharing about your wanting to share this with the outer world, with the outside world, being a helping hand. And I guess that leads to naturally what you're doing with your YouTube channel. So talk to us about that. When did you actually decide to start this?
I appreciate that. Yeah. So I created the Plant Powered Runner YouTube channel in 2015, and I uploaded a couple of videos, but I really didn't know why I was even uploading them. I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of a cool little run. I'm just going to document my running, right? Maybe I'll use it as a journal. And I did, and that was really cool. There was a couple of videos on there, and a buddy of mine, we did like a crazy long run down in Burlington. We just spur of the moment, let's just go ahead and do this. So I created a video out of that. And being a real estate agent, I create videos for my clients. So I have, knowledge on how to do that. So I thought, hey, I like doing videos, and with running, I like running. So let's just go ahead and I'm just going to create this. And I did. And then when I stopped running, there was a long period of time where I didn't have any videos on it at all. Like I uploaded my marathon that I did. I uploaded both of my marathons that I did are on there. All of my other like running adventures, helping my buddy of mine go ahead and achieve his 50-kilometer. So I just put content out there just as I remember, just to remember it, to enjoy that time when I ran. And then I started MAF training, right? I started using this whole Maffetone training. And then it wasn't until a couple of days before the end of the year, 2019, and I'm like, I've been taking clips of me running over the last number of months. And I'm like, and I asked myself when I was out for a run, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, why did I do all of those videos like the last 4 months? And I thought, you know what? Someone needs to hear this. There are people out there that need to hear this. And I to be quite honest, I think there was only one YouTuber that I found that had anything to do with MAF, and that was what's his name? It's in California. I forget his name. Flores
Extra. Oh yeah, extra knowledge guy. Yeah.
So okay. I saw a couple of his videos, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool, right? But then I realized I'm like he's young, like he's a younger guy, and I thought there's nobody my age. Like, if I was my age, who is it serving, right? I want to help people. And so is a 19 or a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old going to get any inspiration from me? I don't know, right? Is a 70-year-old going to get inspiration from me? I don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know how to make a video. I know how to upload it. And let's just see what happens. Let's see how many people I can inspire by me documenting my journey and having an online diary. And if I do that, maybe people will see it and then they'll keep me accountable to my running. So I don't lose my way, right? That I keep running. And so what's happened is over the last year, it's just grown bigger and bigger and bigger. And it wasn't until I think April of 2020, that all of a sudden, I guess one of my videos, I guess a lot of people started to watch it. And it was like 4 months of MAF training. And it was, I think, 1,000 miles and 4 months of MAF training, something about dedication. That was, I think, the video. And all of a sudden, that video started to be viewed so many times. And I was like, I said to my wife, I went, Google's sending me a message saying that my video is doing really well. I said, I don't know what's going on. And then she's like, maybe a lot of people have, like, because of COVID is watching it. And so, but what started to happen was I started to get flooded with emails, messages, everything started to kind of happen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And of course, it was really quiet in April with real estate. So I had the time, I started messaging people back, commenting, and it just kind of grew. And then I realized that, wow, I started looking at my videos. I'm like, a lot of people watch that. I wonder if I should do another one. So I did another one, and then I did another, and then people wanted more and more content. And it just kind of, all of a sudden I realized that somehow I now have a platform and there's people wanting more information on what I knew. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just continue to do what I'm doing. And it started to grow. And then but I wasn't consistent. I was kind of like, oh, okay, post 1 week and then nothing for a couple. And then, so as the year went along, I realized, wow, okay, maybe I need to put out more content. So, but then I started to think, I'm like, how am I going to do this? I'm working because things had picked up with work again, and I'm working, and I'm like, how am I going to put these videos together? And so I had to figure out a way to make it happen. And I did. And then it wasn't really until, I guess, October, I think the beginning of October, once I did my 50 miler, that's when I really started to become very serious and very consistent in doing a lot of my postings of my videos. And since then, I mean, it's helped countless thousands of people, and it's continued to grow. And I'm truly grateful to everybody that, has subscribed and watched, awesome. Me and my crazy adventures. So that's kind of the process of how it happened. But yeah, it really kind of happened on that one video that I did, and it kind of took off from there.
Wishing you continue to grow that, and now you have a Facebook page, and I see a lot of participation there as well. So, all the power to you to continue doing that, and that's awesome. Great.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, and again, everything that I've added, people have asked for. So there was people that had asked for my Facebook. So I created a group. Someone had asked me about Discord a while ago, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what Discord is, so I'm going to create a Discord server. So I created that. So people that don't want to be in Facebook, but they want to have still a connection in with a community, there's that community, right? So I tried to balance it out in a couple of different ways, right? People reach out to me on emails. People send me things in the mail. Like I get deliveries that come to my office, and it's interesting. And because I learned so much from other YouTubers, and now people are learning from some of the things that I have to say. Yeah. And I think that's what the YouTube universe is about. It's about helping other people, right? And being able to contribute to others such as yourself, and to be available and to help. And to me, that's the way that I live my life, is helping others. So I think the more that we help others, I think we can learn a lot in that process.
Hey, awesome conversation. I want to move to the last part of our conversation. We covered a wide ground, which is the rapid fire round, and I'm going to have some fun questions, and we'll just have some fun with it.
All right. Sounds like a plan, my friend.
All right. So you're a Canadian, so let me start with the beverage. What's your favorite post-run beverage?
Post-run. Now, would it be after a race or would it be just after a regular run?
After a race. Let's say, how do you treat yourself? What's your favorite beverage to treat yourself?
Honestly, I'm probably going to be it's going to be water, lemon and lime juice, and a little bit of salt.
Right. I was hoping to hear the favorite Canadian beer or something. No.
Well, I don't have that after a race, but if it is going to be a beverage of beer choices, it would probably be something from our local brewery at Hockley Valley Brew. They're located in Orangeville. So anything from that line, I would say I'd go to.
Awesome. And what is your favorite post long run guilty pleasure in food?
Guilty pleasure. Well, if I can get access to it, I'll have a vegan brownie with toppings.
Nice. Share with us a dream running destination?
Hard Rock 100.
Hard Rock 100. All right. 2022.
Yeah, if I could ever get into that.
Spring or fall? Favorite season to run?
Fall.
And this is an interesting trivia, but let me see if you can guess this. So the treadmill was invented by the British around 1817, I read. Do you know what was the intention of it?
Punishment.
Yes. Not bad.
Yeah, it was used as a punishment. They actually used to have it on these wheels, right? And so these cogs, and they'd have to walk on it so that way it would power the mill. So that way they would use that to, power other things.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
So when runners are complaining about treadmill and punishment, we shouldn't be judging them.
Exactly.
That was the intention. All right. Hey, we kind of thanks for those responses. That was fun. And we're coming to an end of our show here. Before we wrap up, any closing comments?
I would say just because you run, it doesn't mean that you can't do other things, right? Like I love doing yoga and I love meditation. I love going for walks and just hiking and just basically be in nature. Like if you can get out to nature somewhere, spend that opportunity and explore the other things in life, because running isn't just one thing. We do all kinds of things, right? And if you like kickboxing, explore it, do it, right? If you enjoy woodworking and carving or bird watching or making food in your kitchen or whatever it is, just enjoy, be present, be in that moment, and don't think about the future or the past, just the moment, because that's all that we have. And if you can enlighten somebody else and put a smile on someone else's face, then you know what? You can put your head on the pillow and have a good night's sleep knowing that you've done the best that you can do for today, because that's all we have is just in the moment.
Awesome. Beautiful. Hey, David, was a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is all mine, my friend. Pleasure is all mine.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll be in touch.
You got it, my friend. Thanks a lot.